Have you ever felt stuck in your growth journey, wondering how to build resilience in the face of challenges?
Or maybe you're looking to shift your mindset and unlock your full potential.
Well, if you said yes, then you are in the right place.
Welcome to the Stretch Zone. I'm Hannah.
And I am Feds.
And here we explore self-development, nurture resilience, and embrace the mindset shifts that help you grow beyond your limits.
Hello and welcome back, everybody. How are you, Hannah?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm ready and raring for today's conversation. I look forward to these Mondays that we get to hang out these days. I'm not going to lie, the first season I used to get a little bit more anxious, but now it just feels like I'm having a right old jolly wag with my friend.
Yes, it has been very nice. And I'm actually quite looking forward to talk about today's topic because especially today, when I read the title, I was like, okay, I think I need to dive deep into why do I take failure so personal? Like, I take it so personally, right? And we're gonna try to explore a little bit how failure is not the end, or at least that is the rational side of the story. But then, of course, there is all the rest that is happening in the background. And I would also invite you guys that are listening, please don't let us feel lonely in this thing. If you are experiencing any kind of failure, you don't have to tell us what's happening. But you are more than welcome to share with us however you are feeling. If you have any strategies or any techniques that you are trying to implement in your life to try and not take failure so personally, because I know that it's something a lot of people feel. And I would literally really love to know what other people are doing. So you are not alone. Talk to us. So, what is failure? Right? Of course, we normally talk about life overseas. We talk about how we had to reinvent ourselves and what we did, right, throughout all of these lives. But realistically, failure is something that could happen even on a smaller scale. You don't have to have moved anywhere. You don't have to have done it. Some people feel like a failure in general in life, even if they haven't done anything. But it is something that it's really embedded in what we learn, I think, throughout our childhood, our life, the idea that you've done something wrong, you've made a mistake, you were not good enough. You try and do something better and better, but it never works somehow. And so I think this is something that we learn from a very young age, right? We start going to school, we start getting into this idea. But what if we started looking at failure from a different perspective? So it's not the end of the road. That's not where we should stop, but it's actually where we should start growing if we have a different approach to that. So I don't know about you, but a lot of my clients come to me and they have a lot of trauma from past exams, past teachers, people telling them, "Oh, you'll never be good at English," or "You'll never be good at communication," or "You're terrible at presenting. Why do you even do it?" And so people often end up thinking, "Oh, of course, I'm not good. I'm never going to do it again. I should have known better. I'm not cut for this. Everyone is good at English. Why am I not?" Like all of these kind of recurring thoughts that they stop us from moving forward. So we should probably try and have a little bit of a mindset shift here, thinking that whenever you fail at something, it's not the end of the road. It's not a verdict. It's simply data telling you that something needs to change. What can we change and move forward, right? I'm curious to know a little bit more about the geek part, the science part of it. So, what can you tell us, Hannah?
Yeah, so I was just listening to what you were saying, and I was just thinking of all the moments that I've said to myself, "Oh, I'm a failure." Literally, I'm a failure, and it is so interesting. It took me such a long time to attempt to reframe that, as you've just said, in terms of it isn't the end of the world or a verdict. That really sort of felt very profound to me when you just said that. Um, and it's definitely a work in progress for me, but I'll talk a bit later about where I sort of really noticed a shift in myself about how I could sort of start to reframe it and learn that it's more like feedback. But just to let you guys know who are listening, and feds and myself, we're not alone. All of us think like this. It's actually really a normal human reaction, and we haven't failed if we're thinking that we're failed. So it runs really deep within our nervous system. Again, we always love to talk about the nervous system, but it seems like our nervous system has just never caught up with society and evolution. It's going right back to thousands of years ago. Again, it's about that sort of being part of a survival group and a team that it's that we want to fit in, it's that we want to be part of a group, we don't want to stand out, we don't want to be sort of seen as the weakest link. So it's that cheeky amygdala again that is working on overdrive. It's that alarm system within us. So unfortunately, there's this little part of our brain that lights up within us and is starting to detect threat again. So that's actually the sciencey part of it. And it just so happens that our nervous system hasn't caught up. It isn't that we're now, worried that we are going to die from starvation or a big bear, although I do live in the US now, and that's my greatest fear, is walking into a brown bear. I actually, they're not brown bears where I live, so I probably won't, but a black bear is still scary enough for me. Um, and nowadays it's more about, that threat of, oh, I've messed up at work, I'm going to be exposed for not being good enough, I might lose my job, and then all of those things that sort of come, the repercussions that come from that, they're very true, they're very real. That threat, losing a job does cause huge amount of threat to our survival for some of us. It isn't simple that we can just go and get another job and pay the mortgage and pay for your kids and pay for life. So, there is a real threat to us happening. It's just in a slightly different way. So, unfortunately, our brain treats social threat the same way as it does just pain in the body. It's actually just the same reaction that we're getting. So remind yourself that you're not actually overreacting. We're just wired that way. But we can, challenge it. And that's what we're going to talk about a bit today. Um, I don't know about you, but it 100% is for me. My self-worth is definitely entangled with my performance and judgment from other people, looking
Mm-hmm.
at my performance. I want to do well. I'm not someone that's an absolute perfectionist, I wouldn't say, but I have integrity. I want to do well. I want to do well for myself. I want to do well for others. And you might relate to some of these sort of feelings or sayings that if I do well, I am good. If I fail, something is wrong with me, and in our childhood, as you mentioned, we are rewarded for being a good child, we are punished for being a
Mm-hmm.
bad child. That's definitely part of our upbringing, and there are repercussions in the world for doing something wrong. And it could be like just the smallest thing that happened in our background that could sort of set you off down this route. I, for example, am dyslexic, and that's something that was just really, really challenging for me, was reading and writing when I was younger. And
Mm-hmm.
I still remember those moments of being sort of shown up in public in a way that felt very uncomfortable. I'm also very lucky that then I could sort of break through and I could find people that really brought my sort of best skills out, so I could overcome some of those things. But I do still remember some of those really embarrassing and excruciating moments, and now have created along the way sometimes some thoughts that, well, I can't do this because I'm dyslexic, or I can't do that
Hmm.
because I can't read or write or spell as brilliantly as someone else. um that inner critic is strong, right, in those moments. And again, we can be our own worst enemy when it comes to failure. And if you're watching me, or if you're not watching me, I'm putting inverted commas around the word failure at this point. Um, Failure has just such a bad PR
Hmm.
around it, right?
Hmm.
Is if we can really start to just remove the word failure, or we can just start to embrace the word failure,
Hmm.
then we can actually really learn from failure.
Hmm.
um, there are just the way that we live our life right now, especially, I think, is all about kind of winners, hustlers, these leveled up versions of ourselves. We talk about a lot of self improvement, but there's a lot of toxic positivity around sort of being on top of the game and pushing yourself and being the best version of yourself. And we've got to try to find a balance that doesn't tip us into, well, I'm not the top of the game, I'm not pushing hard enough, therefore I am a failure. So we really want to try to balance things out with what we see around us. Most
Hmm.
people are not showing their failures online. So I'm really talking more about
Hmm.
sort of social media at the moment. Most people are showing, the creme de la creme. They're showing the best part of their life. We don't see the failures, the stumbles behind. I mean, I'm starting to see it a little bit more. I do think there are some people trying to push that message out there, but it's
Finally.
balancing act, isn't it, to really not take on board the wrong message and then not feel inadequate about yourself either,
Yeah.
along the way.
Hmm.
Um, just wondering, Feds, can you think of a time in your life where you personally have felt like you've overcome a failure, or maybe there was a roadblock where you didn't even overcome a failure, as I'm putting in inverted commas,
Hmm.
how you dealt
Hmm.
with
I think probably the best example is when I went back to uni.
it? Yep.
So I finished my high school diploma here in Italy, and I initially decided to enroll in a uni course. I picked the worst possible major, and it lasted only 6 months. Left the course, moved to London, and I think it was a year after I moved to London, I started noticing that everyone around me had two jobs, doing a master, working overnight. And I was like, hold on a second, how is this possible? Everyone around me, I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved these people to bits, but they were just normal people, like a lot of other people, right? Like me. And I was like, how is it possible? They can do all of this and I can't. So I actually started looking into university courses and I found one that I really liked. Um, it was divided in three different levels. So at the end of each level, I could have actually stopped if I had wanted to. And I feel like because I found the perfect environment for me, like something that really gave me the conditions I needed, I felt like comfortable at the idea of going back to study. And then I finished the course. I did the whole 3 years. I got my degree. So that was a moment when I actually thought, okay, I'm not a failure after all. It was just the first time I tried to go to uni. It was the wrong moment in my life. It was definitely the wrong course. And I'm actually quite happy that it didn't work out eventually the first time because I wouldn't have left to go to London and blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, that's probably the best example I can think about. Doing something that everybody thought, nah, she's not that kind of person. She's not the kind of person who can get a degree. And I'm like, yes, I can. And I actually got a master as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think the thing that really stuck out there for me was um, I'm actually glad it didn't work out the way that I thought, you know,
Yeah.
maybe it
Yeah.
was best. And the thing is that in the moment, it feels like the worst thing ever, doesn't it?
Yep.
Obviously, if there's one thing that happens after the other, it's harder and harder and harder to be able to be like just in that knowing of it'll work out at some point, it'll work out at some point. That can be the darkest time, I think, for a lot of individuals in life. But I think that at some point, usually we are able to reflect and go, huh, okay, if that hadn't happened, then maybe I wouldn't have been able to achieve this, that, or the other. I
Yeah.
think for me, I have really realized that for many years, I didn't push myself because of fear of failure. I think that I held on to that for a really, really long time. Um, Looking back at certain things, and I think a lot of it probably is related to sort of in terms of career wise and pushing myself in that realm. It's taken me a long time to get to sort of thinking of myself as, oh, I could have a career. It just wasn't something that I sort of wanted to push myself towards.
Mm-hmm.
I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it was because of the fear of failure
Mm-hmm.
when it came to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm really starting to see that now. And it's, you know, I'm in my early 40s now. So it's really taken a long time. And I have definitely looked over the years at other people and thought, wow, you know, how do they do that? Um, and I am still though grateful that it's taken me this long because I feel much more sure about what I want to do and how the future
Mm-hmm.
sort of looks to me. But I do
Mm-hmm.
know that the fear of failure has probably held me back over the years on certain things.
Yeah. And I think that is one of the major points here. A lot of people are afraid to fail. And so
Yeah,
because they are afraid to fail, they don't even take the first step towards whatever direction they want to go.
yeah.
The problem is that if we don't try and we don't actually take action, you will never understand what works for you. So I have I've had many different jobs in my life, and I came to realize in the last 5 years that I am not made to work for someone else. And
Mm,
every single job I had in the past, I always felt like I wasn't good enough, I wasn't
mm,
happy enough, I wasn't in the right place. And so eventually I always ended up leaving, right? And so there was this side of me constantly thinking, crap. Why is this why am I not able to hold on to an office job like everyone else is able to do? Like, why am I struggling so much? And now I
mhm.
know because I'm just simply not made for that. And I think
Yeah,
it's important to get to a stage where you're like, hey, you've tried, you failed,
yeah,
dude, maybe this is not for you. Maybe you're
yeah,
supposed to be doing something else. So instead of trying doing exactly the same thing, how don't we try and change the numbers in the equation and see if the result changes? And a lot of people don't do that. They either want to conform to whatever ideal society is throwing at you, and so they
sure.
feel like they're not good enough or they're not enough in general, or they don't even try. They just get stuck
Definitely.
and they start procrastinating, postponing endlessly the moment when they will actually take action. But it was good for me. because I
Oh,
mean, I
100%. That's what I've come to realize too. It just took me a long time to sort of um, be brave enough to dip my toe in. That's how I look at my life. Do you know what? I've got such a funny story as to why I started to realize what I was doing. It all relates to a TV program in the UK called SAS Who Dares Wins. Did you ever watch that?
um I don't think so, but maybe I
So
haven't.
my, so my husband became obsessed with this show when it first came out, which is years ago. We used to watch it in Australia, and then it came
Okay.
to Australia. So
Okay. So maybe I
um,
have watched it. What is it about?
it's about the normal people doing like a short variation course of the what the SAS guys have to do to get into the SAS. So like a
Ah,
week long or a 2 week long mini version of trying to get into the SAS. And
okay.
so they have to do so many different physical, mental challenges, obviously. And I just saw how, and the more the season sort of went along, the more it became much more of a mentoring type show.
Mm-hmm.
And at the beginning, it was definitely, I think, even more brutal at the beginning. And now it's just boring because I've seen it so many times. But there was some great messages in there. And for me, I was just like, wow, the biggest thing that I learned from that show was dare to push yourself and dare to fail. And
Mm-hmm.
to realize that failure looks very different to different people.
Oh yeah.
I'm watching these people that are absolutely phenomenal and amazing, and they still feel like a failure at certain points of their life, and they've got to prove something to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, just managing 3 days on this show, they fail again. I'm inverted commas. They have to leave because they don't get through it. They actually don't feel like a failure. They feel so proud of themselves for getting through 3 days. And I was just like, huh, that's amazing. Okay. And then the other person is actually watching my husband because he has um, never been afraid of failing. He's afraid of it,
Mm-hmm.
but he will. His whole life, he's pushed himself and fallen and picked himself back up. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's probably the biggest thing that I admire about him. And
Mm-hmm.
I've really paid attention to that in terms of him
Mm-hmm.
personality. And I've
Mm-hmm.
started to sort of look at it and go, wow, okay, that ability to pick yourself back up and learn from it it's just phenomenal. So I started to sort of see how I could embrace that a little bit more along the way. And I think I've learned so much more about myself and my capabilities. I've started to trust myself more since falling, and realize how I can pick myself back up again. Um, is one of the most liberating things I think I've learned in adulthood.
I mean, it is definitely connected to a lot of different things we talked about. Resilience,
Yeah.
growth mindset, habit building. Like, there's a lot of stuff involved in this. But I think what really scares people is the feeling, like
Yeah.
what you feel when everything goes tits up.
Yeah.
you know, and you're there and you're like, what have I done? Like, what could, and then you start asking yourself, maybe I could have done things differently. I could have said something else. I could have acted in a different way. And like, different people have different reactions, but overall, I think it's the uncomfortable feeling that
Yes.
we could have maybe done something else. And so I guess the gap here is, once you feel that you could have done something else, go and do it instead of stopping yourself and keep on thinking and overthinking and just keep on reminding yourself of what went wrong. Pick up the pieces and try and put in practice the alternative version that you have in your mind, whatever that might be, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just the feel. I think people really struggle with the feeling. what the way
Right?
we
That
have in a
discomfort. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
really struggle with the discomfort, and probably because no one, I don't know, well, not in my experience at least, no one has ever taught me how to deal with discomfort. It is
No.
something that we have to learn by ourselves.
Yeah, and I think it's like we as we're not parents, but I'm thinking of our parents, and I think my parents did a very good job of raising me, by the way. I don't have any issues. I do wonder if they prepared me for moments of failure. I mean, they might have tried a couple of times, but I think as a parent, it would be very uncomfortable to teach your child that, even.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I know that as a parent, if I was a parent, I would struggle with
yeah,
teaching my child that, because it is uncomfortable, that
yeah.
that moment. And if you're seeing your child in distress or discomfort, you want to always nurture and help and make sure that they're okay. But I do
Hmm.
think we as kids could really do with learning how to fail more often and realize, oh, you know what, there is usually a way out of this. Or there's a different route that you can take. I love the
Yeah.
idea of, so a lot of my clients, they come to me with the indecision of where they want to move or if they want to move. And so they're just going around and spiraling in these thoughts of, should I go or shouldn't I go? And a lot of the issue is that fear of, well, if I move to this place and I fail, then what? Okay, this is a very common thing that comes up.
Uh-huh.
And I say to them, okay, so we have some choices here. You have a fork in the road. It's that classic imagery. You've got a fork in the road. So you've been walking along for, 3 miles. Then you've got a fork in the road and you've got left or right. You have to choose a direction to go in. You don't know if one of those directions will get you to your destination or not. It probably will. Then you just sit there in complete indecision and never choose one of them, well, then you're never going to get to your destination. If you decide to take the left road and you realize, 5 miles in, uh, that isn't the right direction, then you can turn around and walk back and then go down the other route. I'm
Hmm.
not saying life is just this simple. Obviously, it isn't. That other road is going to be a different road, and it could be even more difficult. But it but you might then get to your destination. So
Hmm.
it's about the fact that this worry of the unknown out there will just
Hmm.
stop us still.
Hmm.
When you kind of put it into that simple terms, you think, well, why the hell wouldn't I just try and see what it's like on the other side, or through this route? Otherwise,
Yeah.
I'll never actually know. And you just sit
Yeah.
in one place, constantly pondering,
Yeah.
we'll never know.
Yeah.
Um, I don't want to be that person anymore that just sits and doesn't know what it's like to walk down one route and decide it's not the right direction for me and walk back. I'd rather do that now.
I feel a lot of people live in fear of the unknown, but that's a whole different episode. But when what you were talking about earlier about family, I personally think that a lot starts at school,
Yeah.
because realistically, like, well, our parents can help us, when we are learning how to walk, learning how to speak, learning how to eat, but I feel like it never really feels like a failure. Unless you have horrible parents and they make you
Yeah.
feel bad, which is a completely different story, but otherwise, normally, I guess the natural reaction of every parent would be, okay, let's do it again. Let's do it again and again and again, eventually to the point where you learn how to walk, eat by yourself, and whatnot. I think to me, failure started at school,
I would
because
agree.
that's when you start being judged. That's when someone starts telling you, you don't know this thing enough. You're not good enough. you're definitely not you don't have talent for this stuff. And in general, teachers don't do anything. Like after you have a test and you are given a grade,
Yep.
I never had teachers telling me, okay, this is what we're gonna do now, right? You got a, I don't know, a C. This is what you have to do to get a B the next time. So let's work together. Let's make a plan so that we can learn from this. And the next time you're going to do better. I'm sure about this
A
because
good
you know
point.
it. No one does that.
Yeah.
Teachers come to you, they tell you that you got a C, and then they're like, okay, good luck. The next time is going to be
Move
even
on.
harder. And honestly, that makes my blood boil because that's the opposite of what a teacher should be doing. And you get into this mindset that you just have to cram a lot of information, learn a lot of stuff, get a good grade, and move on. So to me, that's where failure begins, school. And of course, your parents should always try and be supportive with you. But let's be honest, not every parent is a teacher, right? Teachers exist for a reason, right? They are supposed to be there guiding you in learning and dealing with these complicated moments. A parent might not have the same tools that a teacher should have. So it's a different kind of support. So yeah, long story short, what am I
Yeah.
trying to say with this? That we probably carry with us all of these ideas about what failure is and why we fail from a very young age. But now, guess what? The good thing is that now we have a choice.
Yep.
And we didn't have this choice when we were younger. Now
That's
you can choose what you want to do, what you want to say, how you want to react, and you have the power to intentionally make a choice. So make it.
it. That was like a little mini TED talk. Loved it.
Thank you.
I feel empowered.
Yes, that was the aim.
I totally agree with it. That was that. Yeah, really insightful. So if we were going to sort of sum up some things that we think are important about the idea of failure or how we can reframe the word and the feeling of failure, I think the first thing I would say is let's just bloody normalize it, because all of us have our own thoughts around and feelings around that.
Hmm.
Um, it's in our chemistry, everyone has an Achilles heel that makes them feel not good enough in some realm.
Yeah.
So let's just know you're not alone.
Hmm.
um the other thing is, let's try and zoom out, give yourself space. So when you've got to a point where something hasn't worked out, in the moment it feels so big, and that's okay. Feel it, make room for that big feeling.
Hmm.
You don't need to just put it in a box and move on immediately. Each of us need a moment to sort of figure that out. But at some point, remind yourself that this will be in the past and now I have a choice and how I'm going to move forwards from it. You know,
Hmm.
it might not be possible the day after, whatever it is, to be like, okay, what have I learned from this? You may not know for years what you've learned from a big event that's happened in your life. But at some point, there may be room for you to be reflective on what happened and then adjust how you move forwards with the thoughts or your actions moving forwards from that failure.
Hmm. Yeah. And let us know, guys, if you are listening, um, what failure are you carrying that still feels heavy? And what have you been trying to do to feel better about it? What could you put in practice of all the things we talked about? Is there something that really um, drew your attention or something that you felt resonated with you? Let us know. As always, you can find us on Instagram, YouTube, all the social media at the stretch zone underscore podcast. And what are we talking about next week? Let's see. How to know when to quit something. Oh gosh, I should have listened to this many, many years ago. And when to stick with it. Cool. Okay. Um, Thank you so much, Hannah. Um, Thank you so much for the conversation today. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Beds. You have a wonderful rest of your week. And thanks, listeners. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Wrapping up today's episode, remember, you don't have to face change alone.
If you'd like to connect or learn more about working with us individually, reach out to us through our Instagram account at thestretchzone_podcast, or find our emails in the footnotes to this episode. We're here to support you on your journey, each in your own way.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Stretch Zone. If today's discussion resonated with you, remember to subscribe, leave a review, and share the episode with anyone who might benefit. Until next time, keep stretching beyond your comfort zone.